Hi everyone, welcome to our Google Hangout, Thriving in an Empty Nest. I'm Kristin Arnold, Social Content Manager for Ally Bank.
And I'm Janet Reusch, Social Media Community Manager for Bankrate.com.
Before we introduce our panelists, I just want to take a moment to let everyone know that our discussion today is not meant to provide you with financial or investment advice, but rather you should speak to your financial planner with any specific questions that you might have. All right, let's kick things off. Joining us today to share their personal views on empty nest financial planning is Greg McBride, Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Analyst for Bankrate.com. Also joining us is Jack Tatar, retirement expert and author, and also Elizabeth Fishel. She's co-author of the book Getting to 30, A Parent's Guide to the 20-something years.
So if you've reached or will soon be reaching the milestone of becoming an empty nester, you may be looking forward to the next phase of your life where you can really focus on your interests and enjoy you time.
Right, and it's also the perfect time to focus on the next stage of your financial planning. Taking stock of your overall financial health will help give you a broader picture of where you may need to make adjustments in order to reach your goals, and also be prepared for some of life's unexpected happenings and unknowns. So let's jump right into our first question, and this is pointed for Jack. Jack, in an empty nest, it doesn't actually happen overnight. So what wise financial steps can impending empty nesters start performing now to make for a more comfortable transition?
Well, one of the things that I think people need to understand is that an empty nest is something that you can actually plan for. And when I say plan for it, not just financially, but also attitude. So I think it requires that the people, husband and wife, spend a little bit of time before the empty nest actually happens to kind of rediscover themselves and spend a little bit of time understanding what their interests are, making sure they're in sync, because they're going to be spending a lot of time together after that. Now, financially, I think that there's a real consideration for maintaining contingencies and understanding that things will probably not go as planned, and to take a good look at your extended family as well as your children and some contingencies, and to build some financial plans in there as well. If the children come back, if there's going to be health care costs, those types of things. So it requires a real holistic view of not only the financial aspects, but also the attitude and how you're going to be involved with each other going forward.
Elizabeth, do you want to take a shot at that question too?
Well, I agree with Jack. I think that it's very important to look at both the emotional side and the financial side of becoming empty nesters. And one specific that I would add when Jack talked about contingencies is that sometimes it makes sense to plan for 5 years rather than 4 years of financial support for your 18 to 29-year-old, because one of the premises of our book, Getting to 30, is that the road to 30 is a lot longer and can be rockier than it used to be. And milestones are reached a lot later, and so that 4-year college program might take 5 years or even 6 years, and it might not be followed by a full-time job for your 20-something. So thinking about having a cushion of an extra year beyond the 4 is a wise, albeit somewhat disappointing thing, and it can be a good thing to plan for in advance. Yeah.
So Elizabeth, just to kind of stay on this beat a little bit, what are some of the financial mistakes that people tend to make when becoming empty nesters, and how can those mistakes be avoided?
I think to beware that feeling, oh, free at last, now we can, we the couple, or we the single parent, or I the single parent, can do absolutely anything I or we feel like. There are definitely ongoing obligations. Of course, there's the expense of college, which has gotten ever higher over the years. There's the financial support for kids both in college and out of college, and then also, which I know we'll talk about later, when kids boomerang home. So it's a better idea to look at the whole decade, the 18 to say 29 decade, because many kids are not reaching financial independence until close to 30. I think in our survey, even between ages 25 and 29, parents were still giving help to about 20-30% of 20-somethings. So it's not quite trip to Bali, don't look back. But there's still some obligations.
And Greg, what do you think? What do you see mistakes people making when they become empty nesters?
Well, I mean, similar to what Elizabeth was just saying, I think a big mistake is that you view this extra room you have in the monthly budget as a big windfall that gets spent, which is a problem if you have other financial fish to fry. If you're behind on your retirement savings, if you're carrying high-cost debt, if you're undersaved for emergencies, those contingencies that Jack had talked about, I think it's an opportunity to really make hay while the sun shines on those financial priorities before you start to, really start to have that live it up lifestyle.
And also, if I can just build upon something that Greg talked about in terms of financial situations, is be very cognizant when the children are in college of where you take the money and you use the money from. A lot of people will say, well, I need to pay this, and I'm going to pay it out of retirement, or I'm going to take it from my savings. It's very important that you plan ahead for college with 529s and all those type of tax advantaged accounts, and not take from your retirement, because then you will really incur some real problems later on down the road. So just have a plan and stick to that plan when the children are in college.
If I could just add and tell me your thoughts about this, we say try not to take more than 5% from your investments or savings to help grown-up kids, especially after college. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think
percentage?
I think anytime you have a number like that, that's a good thing to shoot for. It's always good to shoot for things like that. I mean, I know people that plan for college and they will put investments into a 529, a UGMA, and their own accounts in their own name, and not get the tax advantaged benefits there, but also provide some ability for them, should the student get a scholarship or should something work out with the students working, that they can then use the funds for their own retirement. So there's a lot of planning that needs to go on there. So as long as you have a good number, I think that's advantageous.
And finding that balance is what we all strive for, no matter what stage we are in our life. So how can empty nesters find that balance if they just happen to have some excess finances to fulfill their life list, the life list items that they want to do, the things that they've been waiting to do later in life now that the kids are gone, without being irresponsible? I guess, Jack, you can take that one.
Oh, okay. Well, being the most irresponsible one here, I'll take that. I think the reality, when you take a look at, now we're an empty nester, you don't want to get crazy. You still want to stick to a plan, because there is going to be contingencies. There are going to be healthcare issues that are going to pop up. There are going to be things pertaining to your child. They might have 5 children. They may not have any children. There's all these things that are going to come up. I do feel that it is important that when a husband and wife or a couple reach the empty nest, that they do go and celebrate. I think it's a good time to go and celebrate. I'm not a big fan of these people that say, look, I'm going to spend every dime and not leave anything for the children. If I can see that far into the future, terrific, but I think most people can't. So I think you've got to continue to be responsible with your money. But I do think you want to enjoy your life, but I also think that you can't break the planning and the mold of putting money away and budgeting and all of those things. You can't break that. You have to still stay disciplined, but have a little bit of fun with it. But don't go running to Vegas. Don't do anything else. There's still a need to stay disciplined and structured in terms of your financial planning and your financial spending.
Greg, what do you think?
Well, Kristin, you said the key word, balance. And that's really the key is, all work and no play is no fun, but it's not healthy either. So you really have to maintain that balance, both from the financial standpoint, but also from a lifestyle standpoint.
So Jack, you brought up healthcare, which brings us kind of to our next point. Future taxes and healthcare costs are going to be major factors in empty nester retirement planning. So Greg, why are tax-advantaged investments such an important part of retirement planning?
Well, Janet, the tax-advantaged accounts, they really give you the most bang for your investment buck. I mean, it's like having the easy pass to go zipping through the toll booth rather than having to stop and fish out spare change. That tax advantage really turbocharges your returns over a long period of time. When you look at something like a Roth IRA, this gives you tremendous flexibility about when you don't want to take distributions. You don't have to start taking money out at age 70 and a half if you don't need it. So this is, it's a great way to have a pot of money that you can defer until you're in your 80s and 90s. But at the same token, it's also a pot of money that you could tap into early in your retirement years, say when you're in your 60s and you need a little bit of additional income, but you don't want to push yourself in that next highest tax bracket. So I think there's some real advantages to that. I just want to stress that be sure to fully utilize your tax-advantaged retirement savings opportunities before you start saving for retirement in a taxable account.
We've grown up with the philosophy that you want to maximize your income in retirement, because when you're retired, you'll be at a lower tax bracket. I've got to tell you that you want to have as much money as possible, but the tax bracket being lower is not going to be the case. So what we're seeing now is we're seeing a lot of advisors and a lot of planners say, let's find ways to make more tax advantaged income. And they're moving people over to Roths and doing a lot of evaluations that basically show that take the hit now, you'll benefit in the future. HSAs are another way to use some money down the road that's tax-free. So this need to take a look at creating income down the road for you that's tax-free is kind of a new thing, but it's something that people really need to take a look at. If you're still following that philosophy of maximizing income and getting as much as possible in retirement, you really want to take a look at this, because the tax bite can really impact some of your dreams and some of your financial thoughts down the road.
And speaking of that, Fidelity estimates that a 65-year-old couple retiring this year will need an average of $220,000 to cover medical expenses in retirement. And that estimate does not include any costs associated with nursing home care. So for empty nesters, let's say 10 to 15 years away from retirement, how can they factor future health care costs into their retirement saving strategy now?
Well, it really lends urgency to maximizing your savings, particularly those tax-advantaged options we were talking about a minute ago, like the 401ks and the IRAs. But it's also really important to allocate your investments for the long haul. Even once you retire, don't move entirely out of stocks. Over a retirement horizon that could stretch 25 years, 30 years, maybe even more, you're going to need some growth. You're going to need some investments that protect your buying power, so you can't afford to hunker down in safe haven investments.
Jack, do you want to take a stab at that as well?
Well, I think it's a very, very important thing that a lot of people did not recognize. I remember about 5 years ago, I was on a television show in Connecticut, and I mentioned this number to the person, and it was a money show. She almost fell off her chair. She could not understand or believe that it was going to cost this much money. So many of us go into retirement thinking Medicare is going to handle everything, and it's not. It's this $220,000 number is something that Fidelity has been playing with, and the reality is you have to have a plan for getting money to handle your healthcare costs in retirement. It's not just about your income. You're going to have to need money for healthcare costs, and these are probably going to be even more of an issue now with the changes in the healthcare laws and long-term care, all of those types of things. If you're a younger person, you can take a look at long-term care, take a look at those options. A lot of them are drying up. Some people are using annuities with riders and those types of things. The point is that there's a lot of options out there that you need to take a look at. But I'm not sure that they've even got that figured out, a lot of these products out there. So you've got to, it is very important for you to plan on having healthcare costs down the road. Once again, that's another contingency situation. Medicare, Medicaid, those types of things are probably not going to pay for those things in the way that you thought.
And Jack, you mentioned long-term care insurance, and I want to talk a little bit more about that because it's something that you may or may not ever need to have, and a lot of the plans out there now, you want to get them early before you get sick. And a lot of the plans are becoming hybrid plans where they offer not only long-term care, but they also kind of, offer life insurance. So when you plan for that contingency later in life, and you're talking long-term care, what are some of the considerations for that type of insurance?
Well, I think that long-term care is definitely a consideration, and people will say, and you've got to get it younger. You can't wait until you're older when you really need it. You will not be able to get these plans. There are annuities out there that have hybrid types of things where you put a rider into place to handle these types of things. But many people have to get past the cost of long-term care. So many people say, I don't want to pay for long-term care. I may not need it, and it's a costly expense. Well, you pay for auto insurance. You probably don't use auto insurance. You may never use long-term care, but I will tell you that the amount of money that it will cost you for long-term care will wipe out your estate that you were hoping to pass on to your children. So you've got to take all these things into consideration. Long-term care is a very personal and customized solution for people out there. They've got to take a look at the options out there, insurance plans, hybrid plans. Educate yourself on this.
Another contingency that many people may or may not plan for, and when I say many people, I mean empty nesters, is some boomerang kids might be coming back into the nest. And of course, parents instinctively want to help the kids, but they might do so at the detriment of putting money towards their retirement. So this question is directly for Elizabeth. What are some of the strategies that both parents and boomerang kids can, apply to their situation?
To make things more harmonious, when boomeranging, which has become almost inevitable, I think 50% of 18 to 24-year-olds are moving back with their parents, and so the stigma is gone. We're becoming a little bit more like many countries around the world, Europe, Asia, South America, where it's completely natural and expected for kids to either stay home or come back after their education, and some don't move out until they get married. That pattern hasn't really taken hold here, and it probably won't. But the most important thing is to have advanced discussion and advanced planning, and that means, even though it's a little delicate, but before your kid has moved back from college, to have a talk and tell them exactly what you can offer, see if there's going to be an end point. Some parents will say, I'd love to welcome you back for 6 months or a year, but after that, you've got to fly on your own. Also, what are your expectations financially? Are you going to ask them to pay some rent or chip into other expenses like buying groceries? And then in-kind contributions like cooking dinner on a certain schedule or once in a while, or doing chores, or taking the pet to the vet, or whatever it might be that isn't necessarily financial, but will definitely ease things for a parent with a boomerang kid. And then the other thing, from the young person's point of view, do they have what we call a plan with a capital P? It's a lot easier to support a returning grown-up kid if you can see that they're taking some good steps toward a profession, toward solid employment, toward moving out and finding a place of their own. I mean, if they have an internship, maybe it's unpaid or maybe it's badly paid, but is it in a field that might go in a positive direction? Maybe they need to do part-time work, but they can still explore some avenues in a field that could really build into a career. if as a parent you see that your kid has this plan, then I think you're a lot more comfortable giving them the support, knowing that there's going to be an end point.
And I'd like to hear Greg's response on that, because sometimes that support means money, and that money could be going towards, retirement. So how do you, Greg,
Sure.
how do you, balance that out without sacrificing your future for retirement?
Well, I think Elizabeth kind of hit on some of these points where things like establishing rent, specifying the maximum amount of time you're willing to help, or the amount of financial assistance you're willing to provide, because at the end of the day, you cannot sacrifice the ability to save for your own retirement.
And I'll just add, speaking of building your own retirement, when your 20-something does get a decent job, even though it seems miles away, encourage them to start contributing to their retirement plans. And, they may be in better shape than some of their parents are today. Also, who knows whether Social Security will survive, so it may be even more important for them.
Definitely a great point to bring financial literacy into the picture.
Yes, exactly.
Greg, what should somebody do if they end up sandwiched between financially caring for both a boomerang child and an aging parent? What advice do you have?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of this really boils down to how much room do you have in your budget? How much of it are you willing to sacrifice, and for how long? It's vitally important that you're not sacrifice your financial preparedness for retirement, meaning that don't tap into your retirement nest egg prematurely. Don't sacrifice your ability to make ongoing contributions, which can happen by either not having the money earmarked for retirement, you're giving it all to the relatives that are living under your roof, or when you quit a job, then you lose that earned income that makes you able to make retirement contributions. I would caution against those steps simply because of the long-standing financial ramifications that they have.
Greg and Elizabeth make some great action items to do here, and I think they're great points. I think we've got to view this when you're in this situation where you're in sandwich between that child coming back and the elderly parent. You have to view it as an opportunity. And this is an opportunity to teach. It's an opportunity to teach your children by showing them what you're doing, how you're taking care of the elderly parent, because at some point you'll be the elderly parent, you'll want them to take care of. But it's also an opportunity to teach them about financial planning and how to put these things into place, because the best way we learn is from experience. So when certain things come along and you see what a hindrance it is on someone because their parents didn't save the right amount of money, that's going to convince your child that, wow, I don't want to put you in that situation, and I don't want to put myself in that situation. So we learn from these experiences. So it's important that you take a deep breath and you view this as an opportunity to teach and to use these experiences to help your children, and also to do what needs to be done, and in essence set an example for those children as well.
And I would also add, from the multi-generational point of view, that if there is a limited amount of money that you can put toward either side of the sandwich, either the young person or the elderly parent, it seems likely and logical that it might skew a little bit more to the elderly parent, because the young person has many opportunities for earning and saving, and can live independently on a smaller budget. But I think it's also important to show the young person that giving that emotional support to an elderly person, a grandparent, is a way that he or she can contribute, even if he doesn't have any funds to contribute. But to visit, to call, to help parents when they are trying to help out their elderly parents, that's just teaching the message that we're all interconnected, and it's a circle of help, and it will come around.
Well, before we end our hangout, I just want to ask each of our panelists, what piece of positive, fun advice would you give to empty nesters right now? Let's start with Greg.
Well, I think it's a great opportunity. You've got a lot of those exciting years that you've worked hard for possibly the past 2 or 3 decades that are in front of you, and they're coming within sight now. So I think it's time that you can kind of formulate some of those plans and dreams that maybe you've had all along, refine them, and you're right on the doorstep. So I think it's sure to be an exciting time for a lot of people.
I would say to couples, I'm sorry, Elizabeth. I would say to couples, when you first met and fell in love and decided to get married, remember what that was like, because now you have an opportunity to go and rediscover yourselves, rediscover things, and enjoy and take a look back on what you've accomplished, and to enjoy yourself, and go out there and now kind of rediscover the love and the relationship that you've had, that you've built this family for, and enjoy yourselves.
And I'll just add that I think it's lovely to have plans as a couple. My husband and I are looking forward to being able to travel more and visit people in this country that we might not have had a chance to see in a long time. But it's also a good thing to have independent plans and to take up some new hobby or interest or class, or something that you've had on a back burner for all those child rearing years. And then finally, yes, you're rediscovering yourself as a couple, but we certainly are also having a lot of pleasure. We're not retired yet, but our kids are moving through their 20s, and we love being with them. Now they're out of the house, they've got their own lives, but we can go out to dinner with them and their girlfriends just as we would with other couples, and just enjoy their company and watch them grow up. And, occasionally there's a bailout or a money request, especially when weddings come along, but it's not so frequent.
And you've planned for those contingencies.
Oh, so we planned so well, Jack.
Yeah, my mom always said she liked me better after I moved out, so, that
Absolutely. They gotta leave so you can miss them. That's the whole thing.
That's right. She wanted to miss me. That's right.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank our panelists today for helping our audience prepare for the empty nest years and some of the financial and life goals changes that come along with this phase of life. If you're at a stage in life where you need to adjust your financial plans, it's best to consult your financial planner for your specific needs and goals. I want to thank everybody on our panel again. And everybody for watching today, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for my co-moderator today, Janet.
It's been fun.
Thanks for joining us.